Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums, our first Ranking the Albums show of 2021. And today, got kind of an easy one to do here today. So, I'm sitting there going through my long list of bands that I have yet to do Ranking the Album shows on that I intend to. We got a whole bunch lined up for the next week or so. But I said, well, which one haven't I done that I can probably put together pretty quickly? And actually, they weren't even on the list. All right, I was actually looking through my CD collection for a band or bands that only ever released a couple of albums that we could do like a quick show on. And I said, wow, how did I not do The Firm? All right. Only 2 albums, I get it. Not a lot of albums, not hard to rank, right? But, a cool band to talk about nonetheless. So sometimes it doesn't matter that they had, 8, 10, 15, 20 albums. Sometimes, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's okay too, right? It makes for good discussion. And in the end, it's not about how many albums. It's about, just sitting down and talking about these bands, these albums, and the music they created, right? So, interesting story here with The Firm. So, of course, this was one of those mid-'80s supergroups. Paul Rodgers needs no explanation, formerly of Free and Bad Company. Jimmy Page, of course. Led Zeppelin, the Yardbirds. Tony Franklin, fretless bass wonder. He would go on to form with John Sykes and Carmine Appice, Blue Murder, right, shortly thereafter. Chris Slade, longtime drummer for Man for Man's Earth Band, also spent some time in Uriah Heep. He would go on, of course, to play with AC/DC for many years, so a true supergroup. So they released their first album in 1985. Did a pretty high-profile tour, got a lot of attention on that debut album. Tour did pretty well, but then they released the follow-up, Mean Business, a year later. Didn't quite sell as well as the debut. Band kind of fizzled shortly afterwards. So, you really, maybe 2 years tops, this band was actually a unit, right? A functioning unit. And while, Jimmy Page has gone on record saying that this band was only ever supposed to be around for a couple of years, you have to wonder if that second album did really big business, if they would have kept on going, right? But, the whole problem here, and I think for me, the reason why this band never kind of lived up to the reputation is I think, this was a pretty dark period in the life of Jimmy Page. He was really battling his demons at the time. And, I was just reading earlier today a quote from Paul Rodgers, who was talking about how worried he was for his friend Jimmy, and he didn't want him going down the same road that Paul Kossoff did, like a decade prior. So I think it's one of those instances of a band that had the potential to be great, but timing, based on lots of factors, based on, changing musical popularity, different genres getting more popular, the musical landscape amongst the mainstream changing quite a bit in the mid-'80s. I think that, coupled with Page's addiction problems, I think kind of gave The Firm, the short lifespan that it was always destined to be, unfortunately. But 2 really good albums, I think. All right, so I'm going to rank them in the order of my preference. I'm sure there are folks that are going to disagree here, and that's totally cool. It's like I love both albums. Kind of think I like one a little bit more than the other, but if you prefer it the other way around, that's totally cool, and I totally would understand that. So I'm going to go with my least favorite of the 2. It's not by much, and this may surprise some, but I'm going to actually go with the debut. Okay? Very fine debut, I might say. Bluesy hard rock. Okay, it's produced by Page and Rodgers together. You got the really vibrant opener closer. Okay, you got the catchy hard rock of Make or Break following that up. You've got the amazing velvety fretless bass lines of Tony Franklin on Someone to Love. I mean, for my money, Tony Franklin and his bass lines are the star of the show here. I mean, it's just absolutely wonderful to hear how high he is in the mix, and just, he's just all over these songs. And I think one of the things for me about these 2 albums that don't work is that I don't think we hear enough Jimmy Page on them. But that's okay, because Tony Franklin filled in all the spaces. and these albums work because of that. All right, you got the melodic ballad Together. You've got the fairly big hit Radioactive, right? Groovy rock number, a lot of textures. I mean, the Page is absolutely amazing in that song. You know, you got the acoustic guitar, you got the these, you know, little funky fills, and just it's a really, really cool groove-laden rock song. And I remember the first time I heard that on the radio, I was kind of like, wow, that's a really fun song. And it still is. I was listening to it earlier today, and I'm like, I still really dig Radioactive a lot. You got the Moody Money Can't Buy. Okay, which has some nice Page guitar textures on there. You got the really atmospheric Satisfaction Guaranteed. Got a really tender Paul Rodgers vocal, some inspired guitar work from Page on that one. And then you got Midnight Moonlight, which is a song that kind of borrows some parts from earlier Page material that he did in the Yardbirds and Led Zeppelin. And actually, this was supposed to be originally a Led Zeppelin song. I think Swan Song is what they were originally going to call it, if my memory serves me correctly. But they never wound up using it. So Page and Rodgers kind of took those early ideas and reworked it into Midnight. Moonlight, really good, really good, memorable song. Really great vocals from Paul Rodgers. Great tune. Overall, really solid record. I always had the feeling when it came to this band, it's like they just, as decent as the band was and these albums are, it's like I think we all expected a little bit more. All right, didn't quite live up to the potential, but they're fine for what they are. Like I said, I think Tony Franklin is the absolute star of both of these albums. For me, I could have done without the cover of "You've Lost That Lovin' Feeling." Great song, yes, but I would have rather heard another original. Right. To me, that was kind of like a cop-out, especially since they were like, on tour. They were like, we're not going to play any Bad Company, Free, or Led Zeppelin tracks, right? So, well, then why are you doing a cover song on the debut, right? Anyway, but a really good album, I think. I, however, think that the follow-up is a bit better, at least for me. I know at the time it was viewed by many people as inferior to the debut. It sold way less. And of course, the band kind of fizzled without a trace not that long after it was released. But I think for me, actually, it's a harder rocking, slightly darker album, which I kind of dig. And it's got some really great songs on it. All the King's Horses was a great single. All right, I remember hearing that all over the radio. For me, one of the best songs they ever did. I think the only thing about the song I don't like, I wish it was longer. Really good song, really catchy. Kind of like, it's got this ominous feel to it, which I really dig a lot. But unfortunately, the success of that as a single on FM rock radio didn't really propel the sales of the album, which is a shame. You got the song Fortune Hunter, I meant to say Fortune Teller, which kicks off the album. Really cool song. That actually is a song that was worked on and started its genesis back in the days when Jimmy Page and Chris Squire were doing that XYZ project a couple of years earlier, back in the early 80s, I think 81, right about that time. Very much in the style of kind of like mid-late 70s Led Zeppelin. Really good song. You got Cadillac, moody, lots of groove. Again, those big, huge bass lines from Tony Franklin. Wonderful song. Killer Paul Rodgers vocals on that. And Page's guitar is just kind of oozing all over the place. I mean, his guitar textures on these albums are very unconventional. Right? If you're looking for big riffy rockers like the Zeppelin days, you don't get that here at all. A lot of textures from Page. He was going more for that than riffs, which is, kind of different. What else we got here? Live in Peace. Outstanding song. Big, emotional, powerful, killer Paul Rodgers vocal. Really tasty Page solo, and it's just got it's just big and bombastic sounding. A nice slow build song. Really love that a lot. One of my favorites on the album. Tear Down the Walls, gritty hard rocker. You got the melodic and atmospheric Dreaming. Okay, with again, it's lots of textures from all the guys. Really good. Franklin, again, on Free to Live, the next song, so high in the mix. His fretless bass really, really driving so many of these songs. And then you've got Spirit of Love, which ends the album. And that's kind of like this, lot of piano, really memorable melodies. You got a soaring Paul Rodgers, you got Chris Slade and Franklin both digging in really deep, and then you got this weird kind of sprawling yet quite lovely guitar solo from Page. I think it's a really strong album, and I think over time I wind up listening to this one more than the debut. I think, the debut for some people might have the more notable songs, but I think it's because a lot of people didn't give this one a chance. I think this is a really strong record, but you can totally see why the public didn't really latch onto this. Like I said, it's a little darker. It's more about, textures and moods than anything else. There's not really any like anthems on the album. All the King's Horses kind of is, but not. And, based on the way music was kind of going in '86, I mean, this type of music not really top of people's minds at the time. '86 is all about the big party, anthemic, commercial hard rock stuff, and, kind of the poppy new wave stuff is kind of coming to an end, but, morphing into something else that we would see in the '90s. And I think that this kind of dark and serious type of stuff, not really the flavor of the month, unfortunately. And I think also, too, when you listen to this album, Page kind of seems a little absent on many of the arrangements. Like I said, this is not, it's a heavier album, but it's not like a guitar-heavy album. And I think that you listen to this and you're drawn to Rodgers' vocals and Franklin's bass and some of the Page textures. But, folks who were looking for that dominant Jimmy Page that we got on all those great Led Zeppelin albums, it's not the case really with either of these. Especially this one, but I think it's still a very, very fine album. I love the moodiness and the darkness of this album. Really, really cool stuff. So there you have it. I mean, those are my picks, the two Firm albums. I dig them both. It's cool to pull these out every once in a while, and the supergroup that never quite made it to superstar status, but still really, really solid. And I think if you're talking about the great supergroups of like the 70s and the 80s, you have to bring them up, right? And I think they had enough success to deem them, for the short period of time they were around, they were a success, right? So visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're here on YouTube all the damn time. So coming up this week, we've got tomorrow, we've got another episode of The Monsters Den with Chris Allo and Dan Brown talking all about Dawn of the Dead from George Romero. Friday morning, Martin Popoff and myself are going to rank the studio albums of Accept. Over the weekend, Rich Catino and I are going to give you our top 10 favorite albums from thrash metal titans Overkill. Martin Popoff coming back Monday morning. We are going to rank the studio albums, the solo albums of Mr. Robert Plant. Tuesday, Sydney Taylor's joining me on Top 10 Songs. We're going to give you our favorite 10 songs from Zakk Wylde's Black Label Society. What else? All sorts of stuff happening. All sorts of stuff happening. And tomorrow, Thursday night, I am going to be appearing on Steve Keeler's Rock Fantasy Files show. It's a kind of like an anniversary of and celebration of Neil Peart, who passed away 1 year tomorrow. It's going to be an all-rush discussion show, so I will have links to that either later today or tomorrow, so you can go check that out as well. And that'll be a great discussion, all things Rush in honor of the great Neil Peart. So that's coming up and a lot more, so stay tuned for all of that and much more. Make sure you subscribe. If you like what you see, please click on the Ko-Fi link below and buy us a tea or a pint of beer, or I don't drink coffee, but whatever you like. All your support is greatly appreciated. We've got links to our merch page. Buy any one of the various Sea of Tranquility shirts. We've also got Hudson Valley Square shirts as well. And make sure you subscribe and tell your friends and come back often. And also we'll see you next Monday for another cool Hudson Valley Square show. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.